This is Limited Engagement.
Yeah.
So Once Upon Wing Lake, which again, is certainly it's a tale that involves abuse, which is something that unfortunately I'm familiar with as well. I think that I have only, being essentially about would be 35 later in the year. I think that it sort of is something that I feel like it took me a good 20 to 25 years to be able to even think about dealing with and writing. So how did you arrive at that point where and forgive me, I think it's in the acknowledgments, but there's you mentioned something that you either heard or read that sort of opened up what can you remind me what that is and why it did that for you?
Yeah, so I had this student, I was teaching at the time, and I had a student who said, it was kind of a funny story about his father when he was young, when I guess potential boyfriends would come over to the house to date his older sister. His father would ask them, "What do you know for sure?"
Yes.
And I thought that was so fascinating because I kept wondering, first of all, I'm imagining these poor 15-year-old boys being like, "What do I know for sure?" What?
Nothing.
Right. What is this question?
Yeah, I'm 15. I don't know.
Exactly. But I started to think about it for myself too. And I think it was a period in my life too, where I was trying to get at some clarity about my childhood, right? I was trying to figure out if there was something I could actually say about my childhood. And I think that resonated with me of what can I say for sure about this experience? And I'm not sure I came up with anything that I can say for sure, but I think that questioning became the backbone of the book of, let me dive into this and really think about it. And it was also, I think there was so much beauty in my childhood. I really have amazingly beautiful memories of my mom when I was little, and she was this really magical figure. And I think she was an artist, and she encouraged us to be really imaginative and playful, and think of ourselves as birds, and all of this stuff that I value so much as a poet. And yet she also had this long history of drug abuse and alcohol abuse that made her mean and violent and chaotic, right? And so I think I was at this point of, okay, so how can I keep some of the good parts, the good memories of my childhood, and can I make sense of some of the bad memories, and can I move forward from here? And that was coming at the same time, I think, as thinking about what do I even say about it, right? What do I just say I had a rotten childhood? Well, no, because that's not really fair. I did have so much beauty. At the same time. And so what is the story, I guess, about that? And that was, I think this book ended up being me trying to make sense of it, and trying to make sense of how to continue a relationship with my mom as an adult, right? And I think at the end of the day, and around this time period, I realized I can't, right? I've tried for decades to have a relationship with her, and it's just not working, and I just can't continue. And so I think that was a really important moment too, because I honestly don't think I could have written this book if I was still trying to have a relationship with her.
And that was actually what I wanted to talk about next, is how do you got your brother's permission to write this story as well. And he's heavily involved in it, but you can't write, I don't think that you can write this sort of work if you have to worry about the feelings necessarily, or how it's going to be received by the person it's about, because they're not going to receive it well.
Yeah. And I think I had asked my brother throughout the writing of this for childhood memories, and those, I think, infiltrate the whole book as well. But after I was done, before I sent it to anybody, I sent him a copy, and I said, just read this, and if there's anything you want me taken out, you have first right of refusal. I won't ever send this out if this makes you uncomfortable. And luckily, I think he wrote back and said, nope, it's beautiful. I would never interfere with your art anyway, but no, it's
wow, that's great.
Do it, And so I think that was a really important moment, honestly, for me too, of realizing, we've always been on the same team, but again, realizing we have each other's back, and we have for so long. And that's really the heart of so many fairy tales too.
Well, and that comes through very strongly in the work too, is that there is this partnership where it seems like it's you combating the the kind of crazy stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
Were you, when you were talking to your brother about this, were there any instances where you had wildly different recollections of a memory?
Absolutely. Yes. All over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sure other people have had that experience too, where you're like talking to a sibling and they're like, that's not what happened at all. Yeah. What are you talking about? But I think, a really beautiful thing about my brother Chandler is his ability to recognize, like, that's your memory and that's not my memory, but that's cool, right? We can have differing memories of the same story. And I think he's 6 years younger than me as well, because he had a very different childhood. Like, there was enough of a age gap that he doesn't have those beautiful, magical memories that I have, I think, having just had a little bit more time with a little bit of a healthier parent. And so for him, the magical aspects of our childhood really don't exist, which I think was really hard for me to come to terms with too. I think for a long time I kept trying to be like, no, remember when we had this thing happen, and remember this, and remember it. And he was just like, nope, no, Wow. And for me, it was hard, and it was important to also recognize, okay, so he's respecting my experience of what happened. So I have to respect his experience and not try to convince him it was some other way, right?
Right.
Because he's not trying to convince me it was some other way.
And had you two sat and sort of talked about these experiences before, or was this the first time that you really discussed these memories and experiences at length? No,
we had talked about it before. There's actually again, another famous moment in my relationship, I think, where when I had not been dating Zach that long, and Chandler and I were at we're having dinner or something, and we started drinking, of course, and we started telling these stories about our childhood, and Zach was just kind of there. And at a certain point I looked over and he was like white, he was just like, what happened to you people? Like, this is bonkers. So we had those moments of connecting as adults over like what had happened in our childhood. But I think he had kind of made peace with it all faster than I had. So I think going back through this writing experience was more important for me, maybe, than it was for him.